Hope all is going well with you. Last time we were talking about people, process, and systems, and we were discussing that what's more important, especially when you don't have ability to select who, but you still have to deliver what. Like in Jim Collins' words, that first who, then what, and then you ask them where to go. And like I told you that I've asked him that, you know what, most of us do not have ability to select who, but we still have to deliver what. Mean we have to solve the problems, challenges and opportunities, and we may not have the ability to always select the team members are the right team members. So, but we still have to deliver what. So we discussed that idea. Today we are going to look at the same idea, same set of problems in another, in another angle, so to speak. That we know that even average person deliver excellent results in a right process, in a right structure, in the right environment. And if you put even the best person in a bad environment, unfortunately, that might not be crack the code and may not be able to deliver the value proposition. We know that, some of us immigrants like myself, we came from a broken process and we were not able to deliver well there. However, when we came to United States, we were able to deliver far better because we have the right process, right environment. I have seen many of my friends who were not doing well in other countries, but when they come here in United States and Canada or some other structured, more process oriented environment, they actually deliver very, very well. So that really proves to me that a right process, a right environment can really increase the speed. Let's look at from another angle that we all know the story of the bunny and the turtle. And we know that the bunny really jump and really have a fast speed and really geared toward getting the job done. And whereas the turtle have a very, you know, structured process, a steady speed and persistence. What happens? We know that really the turtle, win the race because he's not that overconfident and he followed the same process over and over. Now, the turtle may not be very innovative. And I tell you, that is another innovative's dilemma. Innovators usually are not very structured people. Entrepreneurs are not very structured usually because their thoughts are all over the place. Yes, they need to focus to really have the right innovation, but at the same time, these guys are geared toward, breaking the boundaries. They don't want to follow a recipe. They want to create their own recipe. So yes, if you put one person with a recipe and the other person with no recipe, you might have a chaos in the kitchen. So it's important that uh, you know a, an innovator really also look at the process benefits. Whereas I tell you, God has all made us very different, and we all have different job. Where I tell you, most of the people who are very very good in the process, they're not really entrepreneurs. They are not really entrepreneurs because they're not innovators either. Whereas a lot of innovators are not very good presidents, and they don't have, because they don't have the process, they don't follow the structure. So what do we really do? What is the right balance? The right balance, in my humble opinion, is that you innovate, but you also document your process so that others can follow. Others can see what you see because the leaders see very, very far. But then it is also leadership's quality to make others see what you see. And they're going to follow you better. They're going to see it better if you document your process. And it might not be your forte to document your process. Then you can hire somebody to really document what you do. And then also you can have some mentorship as well, because you will hear many leaders who will say, oh, I was doing okay, I was making 30 grand, 50 grand, but then when I met with my mentor, then I was able to 10x, 100x my, my salary and my productivity. So, that comes to giving you a recipe, something it's already worked. And many times mentors are not innovators. Mentors are themselves not as successful, so to speak, and maybe the yardstick for their success is different than your success. Your success may be building a $1 billion company, and their success may be building, 10 successful entrepreneurs. So the yardstick is different for different people. So, so I have my own recipe. I have 10-step process I follow, and that might help you. And that actually eventually helped me build a total value system. As you know, a process is a recipe you develop, a documented set of steps uh, you follow, and then a system is when you build that process and automate the process. You build a system. So today we are going to stay focused still on the process, yet another week on the process, and then next week we will talk about our total value system and how do we develop that total value system that enhance your productivity, your team's productivity, and automate your entire system and life. And I'll give you my perspective, and then of course you please share your perspective. So the 10-step process I follow, to tackle any problem, whether that is a problem on hand, whether that is a problem for somebody else, whether that is a challenge for somebody else, whether that is a mentorship, whether that is getting a quote or negotiating a deal, or whether that is a life balance problem, whatever problem I have, I follow this 10-step process. And the very first step is that the very first step is that I like to know, like I shared last time, I like to know what problem are we trying to solve. Now, to understand what problem are we trying to solve, the best thing would be to break down the problem. Every problem, every challenge, every company has different pieces of the problem, different pieces of the puzzle. And I usually like to break it down into three pieces: the front end, the back end, and the middleware. Even in a company, we have a front end, we have a back end, and we have a middleware. Now, if you really focus on your sales, you are only focusing on your front end. If you focus on your delivery and your purchasing, then you are focusing on the back end. And then if you are focusing on your entire middleware, from taking the order to converting into production, all that in the middle, from accounting to financing to production, that is really the middleware. So you are not good only by thinking of a new idea or by selling the idea or the product, but you are good at by delivering that value proposition you have promised. And that's the reason, honestly, I like to really under promise and over deliver, because your repeat customers come from over delivery, not over promise. And if you really over deliver, then you have not only assurance of getting repeat customers, but you also have a referral system built in. And that's the reason you always want to ask an ultimate question to your customer: would you recommend to another customer? And if not, then we try to improve, and that's where the continuous improvement comes in. So that's the reason people like to take 10 out of 10 in that ultimate question. And I will explain in another discussion the front end and back end, and front end branding and back end branding, and then how do you really enhance your productivity and your profitability by combining front to back and by doing front to back communication. But right now, let's stay focused on our process. So the first step is really breaking down the problem, the challenge, the scope, and usually breaking it down into three pieces: the front end, the back end, and the middleware. Then the next step really is uh, the next step is really is developing a very good scope statement, because if you do not really develop a good scope statement, you haven't understood the problem yourself, and then you are not giving the right directions, the right vision to your team or to your external partners. So your answer is as good as your question. Your solution, your cost, your delivery, your productivity, your cost effectiveness is as good as your scope statement is. So it's very important that you have the right scope statement. And then the third step really is that you develop an internal benchmark. A lot of time companies do not develop their own internal benchmark, that basically they have a internal benchmark developed, and now you have that benchmark developed, that you basically are now ready for execution. You have a benchmark, and when you have the right benchmark, now you can really compare with your result. So with the you know with you can develop an internal benchmark if you have the right skill set, if you have right domain expert. Because before getting an answer of your problem from outside, you need to have an ability to develop a prototype, develop a benchmark. Like, for example, if you are asking a code, if you're asking a code in dark, that's no good. If you are building a product, you need to be able to build your internal benchmark of that product, how that product will be built, what the process will look like, and what the cost will look like, and what the timing will look like. If you do not develop that internally, it means you haven't developed the right scope statement. You don't have the right vision. You might ask that we don't have the abilities internally to develop that benchmark. Yes, if you are a good developer and you are going to outsource it to a general contractor, and if you don't develop your internal benchmark, I don't think you have actually developed a good scope or good, vision or good prototype. Now you might ask, okay, well, we know we don't have those abilities, but we still have to do those things. Yes, if you don't have those domain expertise, then of course you need to work on that and develop those domain expertise, or hire the right people that will actually document your scope statement, understand it, internalize it, and develop a benchmark, whether that is a cost benchmark, timeline line benchmark, or a prototype. You need to be able to develop some sort of idea, and so that when you are looking at the solution coming from outside, then you can compare and see that how wrong you are or how right you are. So then that will give you further development for future. So very importantly, you develop a benchmark. Then the next step really is, based on that benchmark, now you can develop a very structured RFP, request for price. If you just send a note and you send a scope statement and you say, give me the price, unfortunately, you are not going to get the right detail in your answer. You may get 10-page code, but you may never be able to grasp and understand and compare with your benchmark. You need to be able to develop a structured platform where people input their information. A, it will be much faster. B, you will be peeling the onion and having them submit information they may not want you to know, like what would be the time for each activity, what type of skill sets you're going to be using, what materials you could be using, what prices you are paying, and then what will be the timeline, what volumes, what assumptions. So this will help you understand their process behind their RFP. So now The other benefit is that if you have a multiple supplier, they are providing you information in the same structure. Now it will be a lot easier to compare with your scope statement and with your benchmark. The next step I follow is I ask um, I ask all my third parties to submit the information, with all those right assumptions. And now I develop a comparison table. And that very comparison table is very easy now, because that, is really a quick input from that form you have developed. And that form could be as easy as Excel spreadsheet. Okay, now the next step would be that now you are ready to set up strategic discussions and learn more and make a lot of progress very quickly. It really cut down the lot of tactics in the discussion. So remember, there is three ways of breaking the discussion as well: a tactical discussion, a technical discussion, and a strategic discussion. Even in any negotiation, I follow these three steps: tactical, technical, and strategic. I like to cut down the tactics, but I like to focus on, the technical side of things, because you have the right scope, you have the benchmark, you have the structured RFP. Now it's very easy for you to set up the right discussion platform, because now your discussion is very technical in nature. What are the assumptions? What are the underlying principles? What are the processes? What are the timelines for each activity? What type of skill set? What is the rate for each skill set? Now, the price, for example, is just merely an outcome, because you have set up that process. You don't need to worry about price. You don't need to worry about those tactics. Your price for sure will be great, because you will be taking down all the muda, all the waste, all the fluff, all the hidden factors out. So your discussion will be very technical in nature and very strategic in nature, that how you guys going to interact, with each other in the next, phase of the project, which would be the execution phase. And then, of course, the next step would be, um, your the next step for you would be, based on your learning, based on your sharing. Now you can improve your own internal benchmark and your RFP as well. That is also a a midpoint check for your own benchmark. And it's a flexibility, it's a two-way street. It's not like your way or highway. It's basically a two-way street. You're learning from each other and you're improving. So that's like a midpoint check. And then the next step really would be setting the goals and measures, and set up those measures which are quantifiable. See, part of the problem is that first, you don't have an internal benchmark, you don't have your own capabilities, you don't have the right RFP, you're getting a contract which is not very well understood. And then you are setting up a contract without stated goals that could link with your scope, and without quantifiable measures. So how are you going to really measure it? And if you can measure, you can manage. So it's very, very important that you have very quantifiable measures. And then the next step would be to then execute and measure with quantifiable measures. And now you can set up scorecarding. You can scorecard for your problem you're trying to solve, and your approach, your value proposition, your timeline, and your delivery, and your customer satisfaction. So you have a scorecard set up, and in that scorecard, now you can offer pointing, pointing system, because you have very quantifiable measures. Okay, and then you can give even your suppliers points on each step. And when you give them points, then and they can give you a scorecard as well. And so we implemented this scorecarding system with all these. Whatever I'm telling you, it's not just the theory; it's the practical steps I have followed all my life. Even when I was head of global supply chain and operations in Nipro, or when I was a vice president of purchasing and third-party manufacturing at Holmes Group, and I set up facilities. Now I follow this process internally and externally, and believe me, that is the best lean system. It's going to take all the muda and all the waste and all the hidden factors out, and it's going to give you a very, very efficient system, which is the total value system, which we will be talking more in detail next week. So then, of course, you can now measure and manage. But lastly, once again, look at what were the misunderstood things so far, what you know now more than what you knew before, what improvements can be made in your process and in your product, in your delivery, in your time, in your cost, and then set that continuous improvement process for yourself and for your subcontractors. And that way you will be keep making yourself better, your product better, your delivery better, your cost better, your cash flow better, your inventory better, and more importantly, you will be satisfying your customer better, and your profitability will be, and your profitability and sales will be going in this direction. So I hope you like this 10-step process I follow, and you can definitely renew. You can look at this video again and see, and please share your thoughts. How what holes you see. I'm sure I missed few things, and I could learn those things from you. It's a mutual learning process, and honestly, I share these things for others to learn and to share their experience. Hopefully, you'll share your experience. Until next time, God bless you all.